Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about a truly awful season that happened to the Colorado Avalanche. And I think this is really topical, so I'm looking at doing this one completely different than others. Because we know 5 years later, this team wins the Stanley Cup. It was an absolute nightmare. They go 22, 56, and 4. They were 21 points. 21 points behind the Vancouver Canucks, who were 29th in the NHL. So Colorado was 30th. It was not close. There was no tension about whether or not they'd finish last in the NHL. And then they lost the draft lottery. They fell 3 spots in the draft lottery. But we'll come back to that. So this was the first season under Bednar, and it started well enough. They were 5-5 through the first 10 games. They had a bit of a bobble in the second 10 games where they were 4-5-1. And then games 21 through 30, games 31 through 40, that's where the disaster takes place. Both segments of time, they were 2-8. Meaning 4-16, and so the dive is underway. And this was when the channel was going, and it was absolutely bewildering to watch. Their power play 12.5%, their penalty kill 76.6%. If it can go wrong, it did go wrong for that team. Now, how many players from the 2022 Stanley Cup champions were on this roster? You had McKinnon, you had Rantanen, Landeskog, Eric Johnson, and JT Compher, who only played, I think, 21 games for them that season. But it's interesting because McKinnon at this point, there was talks about how, well, is he a leader? Is he ever going to become what we expected? He had 53 points that year, I do believe, 53 points. And so it just wasn't going all that great for him. 2016-2017 was a nightmare for McKinnon as much as for anybody else. They did lose the lottery. They drafted Cale Makar at number 4. So if your team loses the lottery, it's okay. If you have a really good GM that knows how to pick, you'll get a guy like Makar. This was the final year in Iginla's career. He spent most of it with Colorado. He was moved to the Kings at the deadline. Interestingly enough, I did see Iginla play in one of those games for the Flames. I thought he played all right, but that was his final season. Now, Calvin Pickard ended up being the starter. Varlamov was hurt and ineffective through large portions. Pickard goes 15, 31, and 2 for a .904 save percentage. I thought he played well. I'm starting to think it's kind of the, for lack of a better term, like the Garth Snow effect. Garth Snow was a decent goaltender for the Canucks on a really, really bad team. And I think when you have a decent goaltender on a really bad team, he stands out. Look at Carl Vejmelka with the Arizona Coyotes. Not stellar all the way through the season, but it really stands out when he gets those good games. And it felt like Pickard kind of had a season like that. Whereas Varlamov was 6-17 with an .898 save percentage. Not numbers you want, right? The interesting thing, going through everything for this video, somehow, some way, the Colorado Avalanche were 7-2 in overtime. I cannot figure out how 3-on-3, this team was pretty good, but 5-on-5, 5-on-4, 4-on-5, they were mostly awful. So it is one of those oddities. Sometimes you'll see a team with a really bad overtime record that is very good during the regular season, very good 5-on-5, and during regulation, just not very good in the overtime. The record at home, 13, 26, and 2. And of course, this year they went on a huge winning streak at home. You go into Ball Arena now, and that is not a friendly place for you. But back then, it was pretty friendly, right? 26 losses in regulation at home. And on the road, they were worse, 9, 30, and 2. So they had 4 more wins at home than they had on the road, but their record at home wasn't good either. Against the East, they were 12, 19, and 1. This is the curiosity, too. And against the West, 10, 37, and 3. They were particularly miserable against the Pacific Division. They were absolutely awful against the Pacific, which again seems odd because it feels like forever we've talked about, well, the Pacific, probably the weakest of the divisions. But for Colorado, it was the one that really tripped them up. And again, against the East, 12, 19, and 1. It's not awful. It's not good, but it's not awful. From December through April, their record was 13, 45, and 3. So once things went south, once you get past that first 20-game set where they were almost 500, then it falls off the map and they don't get anywhere near recovery. There was no point where they were recovering. And you have to wonder too, for Jared Bednar, this being his first season behind the bench in Colorado, it had to be frustrating, right? You've got a pretty talented roster that on paper should be better than this, and it's just not working. Now, hanging over this team was Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene, they got to trade Matt Duchene. When are they going to trade Matt Duchene? Why aren't they trading Matt Duchene right now? And this was a conversation I had on the channel many times over. And I viewed the fact that Sakic wasn't getting the Duchesne trade done as kind of being a fail on his part, and that he needed to get it going and make it work. Well, he was patient, and Sakic, well, he was absolutely right to be patient. It's November 5th of 2017, so it is the following season as Colorado's off to a better start in 2017-2018. Duchesne was traded to the Senators. Now, it was a three-way deal, of course, with Nashville and Ottawa. What they get Sam Girard out of Nashville. They get Shane Bowers, who it doesn't look like he's going to reach the NHL. Andrew Hammond, so third-string goaltender mostly. Kamenev, who had stops and starts, just couldn't really make it work in Colorado. They also get a 2018 second from Nashville and a 2018 first from Ottawa, which was protected. So that jumped to 2019. It was not protected in 2019, and they used that pick to draft Bowen Byram. So that one hurts for Ottawa right there. The Bowen Byram becomes part of the package that goes to the Colorado Avalanche. Byram's an excellent defenseman, and a 2019 third as well. This haul, absolutely fantastic, and is part of the reason why Colorado's your defending Stanley Cup champ right now. July 1st of 2019 is kind of a transformative day for this organization as well, where Tyson Barrie, Alexander Kerfoot, and a 2026 round pick are traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs for a 2023 Nazem Kadri and Calle Rosen. So Kerfoot's been good for Toronto. Barrie doesn't last that long in Toronto. Then there's the exchange of picks. Calle Rosen doesn't stay that long in Colorado, but Nazem Kadri, the second line center this team needed, and it just works. So these are two deals that really stand out, that after that season, you would not have envisioned this team was 5 years away from a Stanley Cup. This though is part of the reason why when people ask me, do you think this team can win a Stanley Cup in 5 years? I never say no. I never say no, because there is always that chance that a team within 5 years can turn things around with the right moves, the right free agent signings, and the right draft picks, and all of a sudden they are a contender and or champion. So the record against Nashville was 0-5, which is bad. They were 0-3 against Anaheim, Calgary, and Edmonton. So 0-9 between those three teams in the Pacific. They were 1-4 against the St. Louis Blues. And against the Canucks, who they were 21 points behind for 29th place in the NHL, they go 0-2-1 against the Vancouver Canucks. Now, in terms of plus-minus, there's nobody with a great plus-minus, but it does stand out that Matt Duchesne and Tyson Barrie had a team worst -34. Of course, Barrie would be traded in 2019, but Duchesne would be gone in 2017. Duchesne, though, had very good face-off rate at 62.6%, so that's one thing he could hang his hat on. But during the season, he recorded 18 goals, 23 assists, 41 points in 77 games. It's not enough. Matt Duchesne was always good on the international stage, but it just did not work in Colorado. And then he'd go to Ottawa, and of course, after that, moves around a bit. Now he's with Nashville, the team that was 5-0 against Colorado when they had Duchesne back in 16-17. The only 20 goal scorer on this team was Mikko Rantanen, who had exactly 20. Nobody else had 20 goals. This was a team that couldn't score. They couldn't keep the puck out of their net. This was just an absolute, complete, and total unmitigated disaster that 5 years later, Stanley Cup bound. They won the Stanley Cup in 2022. So this is why, if you've got a team that has no hope and you're looking and thinking, well, we were 32nd out of 32 teams, how in the world? It can turn around, and it can turn around quickly. But you need the right GM to make the right moves. And Joe Sakic was that GM. There you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.